about where we think crypto is going, and specifically what that means from an Algorand perspective, and what are we going to focus on. And of course, trying to figure out where crypto is going is a very, very difficult thing. Nobody actually knows, really. People are very worried about where it's at right now. We're all waiting for alt season. Crypto Twitter is very nervous. There's a lot of FUD flowing around, so who knows where things are going. But we have, sometimes when you're on Twitter all day long and all night long, you sometimes lose the forest through the trees. You don't see the forest through the trees anymore. And so I want to kind of take a step back and think about longer term, where do we think is a real potential for crypto, and where will we see, in my view, the mass adoption. So that's what I want to talk about. But I want to make this interactive. This is not a huge group, so I'd love to hear people's opinions here as well. So you can disagree with me, you can ask me questions. So anytime, just shout out and ask me anything you want to shout out, or any thoughts you have, please shout out. So where are we going? So I call this like the era of financial empowerment. And so to explain you what I mean, I want to go back in time a little bit. And so to long time ago, like the pre-internet era. In the pre-internet era, the bank was really the center of your financial future, right? The bank did everything. The bank, you had a bank account, you had a checking account, you had a savings account. You did all your payments to the bank. You had a checkbook. Remember these paper slips? You had a checkbook where you would pay, and actually in the US you can still use the checkbook, which is kind of amazing. Me coming from Europe, I moved to the US like, I don't know, 25 years ago, and it was crazy to see people use checkbooks, but they still use checkbooks, which is insane. Your investments are all handled by banks, so the bank is really at the center of everything that you do in finance. And you inherently trust the bank, because the bank is the institution that should be trusted. And then came the internet, and things started to move, things started to fragment quite a bit. And so several companies started picking away at like bank services, right? You had Revolut that came up, PayPal, Venmo, and they each did a piece. Like PayPal and Venmo went after payments and made it so much better than writing a check. And Revolut went after your checking account and made it so much easier to actually store money and then save money in your bank account. Robinhood went after. Am I doing something wrong? No? Yeah. Robinhood went after your investment part, and so you wouldn't use a bank anymore for investments. You would go to Robinhood, which is much easier to use and much more elegant to use than a bank would be. But you basically, as a result of that, you start seeing fragmentation, right? You have all of these different platforms, and so you don't trust the bank anymore. In this new world, you kind of trust the technical platforms, the tech platforms. You trust Venmo, you trust PayPal, you trust Robinhood. You don't really think about the bank that much anymore. But what happens is that you're really living, without knowing, you're actually living again in a walled garden. In the same way as in Web 2, you're living in a walled garden dominated by the gatekeepers like Google and Facebook and X. Actually, exactly the same thing is happening on the finance side. You're also living in a walled garden. And have you ever tried to move money from PayPal to Venmo? You can't, right? And it's owned by the same company. Like, think about that. Like, PayPal and Venmo are owned by the same company, and you cannot move money from PayPal to Venmo, or moving PayPal to Robinhood, or like any movement between these walled gardens is nearly impossible, or is making it very, very hard to do. In the same way, like in Web 2, people want to keep you inside your walled garden. In finance too, right? These walled gardens are also there to keep you within their beautiful, and it's beautiful, like within the walled garden it's beautiful, but like trying to get out and trying to connect is nearly impossible. So anyways, so that's where we think finance is going. That's where the huge opportunity to me for blockchain is. In the same way as we think about Web 3, which really, if we're going to be honest, hasn't happened to any kind of scale, I think we'll probably see Finance 3 before we see Web 3, in my view. And the idea of Finance 3 is that all of these financial services are migrating to on-chain, right? Your assets will get tokenized. Your checking account will live on-chain. Your savings account, which will be the same as your checking account, will live on-chain. The payments will move on-chain. Credit will move on-chain. And all of these things will live as protocols on-chain, and you will access all of them through a wallet. So when you think about this, this fundamentally changes the mechanism behind finance, because the key hub that gives you access to all of the financial services will be your wallet. That's what gives you access. And so you are in control, and of course, as a degen and as a, you would say, like, not your keys, not your coin, but your wallet becomes the core to your financial future, and all of the things are living basically in the background on chain. So that's what I would call the protocol era. And so there's a couple of elements to that. So one, as I said, the wallets are key to the financial future, are the central hub. Now, you know, some people may not want to store their keys, and if you really want to think about like mass adoption, you probably don't want to explain, you know, to my mom and my dad that she has to store 24 words on a piece of paper, which she will probably put on a, you know, post-it note and hang against her PC, which is, so you probably don't want people to do that. So I think there is still going to be a need for custodial wallets, and maybe my mom will trust, you know, some third party that will manage the custodial wallet, but it doesn't change the basic premise that the wallet is the entry point. The wallet is the entry point to finance. It could be custodial, could be non-custodial. I'll go non-custodial, but some people may decide to go custodial and trust somebody else to do so. And then behind this is where you find all of the services. Access, of course, is universal. As in any kind of blockchain environment, access is universal, so it doesn't really matter. Anybody has access to financial services. And so, of course, when you think about the Western countries, you think about Europe and you think about the US, of course, we have it pretty good. I mean, the financial system works pretty well, right? But if you're living in many, many countries around the world, there's over, I think it's about 1.5 billion people that don't have banking accounts, that don't have access to banking services. And so the idea that you only need a wallet and access to these services behind it now makes finance available to pretty much everybody in the world on an equal footing, so which I think is very, very invigorating. The third element is that every asset will be productive. Think about the craziness of like banking today. Like, you know, why am I getting no interest? Why am I getting no yield on my checking account? Like, right? Oh, it's because the banks want to take that money and they want to loan it to a big company and they can make money of that. Why am I subsidizing big companies? Like, you know, that's craziness, right? Like, I should, if I put money somewhere, my money should always work for me, should always generate yield. And I think that's the opportunity that we have with blockchain, is that there shouldn't be a checking account and a saving account, and, you know, and overdraft fees and all that kind of like nonsense. You put money in your account, in your crypto account, it should automatically start generating yield for you 24/7 as you sleep. It should always work for you, and I think that's the promise of this Finance 3.0 era. This next thing is it should be composable, right? Like currently with all these walled gardens, you have assets sitting here, some assets are sitting there, some assets are sitting there. If you want to borrow, well, you know, you want to borrow with this company, but your assets sitting there, so you can use this as collateral to borrow there. And so it becomes a really, really big mess. And so in the future, when everything lives on a blockchain, all your assets become composable, and all of your financial services become composable. So your assets are sitting on chain. You can take any asset you own and use it as collateral for any type of loan that you want to use. And so this deep, deep, deep integration with DeFi, which is ultimately here what's happening, I think is super, super interesting. And now, of course, the last part is friction disappears. All the friction that exists between platforms will disappear when everything moves on chain. Now, this is, of course, you know, a little bit utopic in the sense that we have our own set of friction points in crypto, and so for us to say, when you move everything to crypto, friction will disappear, we have some work to do to make sure that we don't introduce new points of friction to people that are not gens. So anyways, so I think that's kind of the vision that we have. This is, I think, where things are going. And so it basically fundamentally changes the trust model, right? And in the pre-internet era, the trust was the bank. Then with the digitization of banking services, trust became the tech platforms. And then what we're moving towards now is that the trust is really you. You kind of trust yourself, and you basically control your own financial future, which is, I think, very, very empowering. So, so these are, if you think about this, you could say, well, you know, I've heard this story before. This future finance thing, you know, has been floating around for many, many years, and it never happened. And so, is it ever going to happen? And I think there's a couple of reasons why I think the time is the moment is now. And if you think about the building blocks of finance, money and payments, markets and investment, and credit and risk, there's things happening here that make this world actually feasible and make it actually possible. One, of course, is stablecoins. Like without stablecoins, none of this works, right? Because people don't want to pay in algos; they want to be paid in US dollars, and so stablecoins are a core element of this. And with the regulation in the US finally being more open and being more relaxed, I think stablecoins now on a pretty solid regulatory footing, which I think is great to see. And this will unlock a bunch of these payments. The second thing is agentic payments, like X402 protocol. We'll talk a little bit more about that with Coinbase. I think it's a very promising protocol that actually finally allows payments to be embedded deeply into the web, into the fabric of the web. And it's only possible because of agents. And so that I think is another element. So basically all of the AI evolution that we're seeing with LLMs is going to enable this payment to actually move to a blockchain. So that's another driving factor. Tokenized assets and DeFi. So again, this is nothing new, but again, the regulatory component here is critical. And so we already have a market structure bill in Europe with MiCA. We will have hopefully a market structure bill in the US in the next couple of months as well, and that will basically unlock tokenization at a much bigger scale. So I think that's why I think the moment is now, and that's why I think we'll see a lot of progress in this field. So how is Algorand looking at this? There's 4 key things I want to talk about. 15 minutes. One is network decentralization. We unlike many more recent layer ones, we still believe in decentralization, and it feels like an old concept. Like you don't hear people talk about this very much anymore. Except Ethereum. Of course, Ethereum very much is into the decentralization camp, but there's only a few blockchains that are remaining that really keep hammering away at this notion of decentralization. We still firmly believe that decentralization is absolutely key, and none of this will work if you're not decentralized. And when it costs you $10 million to run a node, you know, I'm sorry, but you're not decentralized. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We really focus heavily on that. We want to talk about wallet infrastructure, because obviously if the wallet becomes the hub to your financial future, your wallet infrastructure has to be top-notch. We'll talk about finance use cases and then some of the protocol developments. Okay, so network decentralization. So Algorand actually made a huge amount of progress this year in terms of network decentralization. We used to have a very altruistic perspective on staking. When Algorand was founded 6-7 years ago, the Silvio Micali, who founded it, his point of view was, it is so easy to run a node. You can literally take a mini PC that you get off of Amazon for $200, you stuff it onto your internet connection, and you can run a node and you can propose blocks. So why would we have to pay you to do so? Let's all work together and let's all run nodes, and you can just take your algos and if you're part of this ecosystem, you should run a node, right? Why not? And so turns out incentives matter. And so beginning of this year, we launched a new staking rewards program, and we were of course very late in doing that because other chains had staking rewards for a long time before us. So we launched a staking rewards program at the beginning of this year, and so suddenly we saw the amount of stake in algos just triple or quadruple over the course of 6 months' time. And so we are, from a staking perspective, incredibly decentralized right now. The foundation itself had a 70% online stake. So 70% of the total stake at the beginning of this year was controlled by the foundation, which is not very decentralized. Over 6 months, that stake went down from 70% to about 20%. So we are massively more decentralized now than we were in the beginning of this year. We have 2,000 validators that are running nodes on Algorand, and so I think that puts us, probably number 3. I think Ethereum is number 1. I think Cardano is probably number 2. I think that puts us number 3 in terms of the amount of nodes that are actually running in people's homes, in people's basements, to kind of secure the network. And you can see it's a widely distributed geographical spread as well. Also interested to know, especially now that AWS went down, we are less than, I think none of these hyperscalers represent more than 9%, 8 or 9% of the nodes. So any of those hyperscalers can come down, and we will continue running. And then our staking program, I think, is also very democratic. So as I said, staking is very easy. You can get a mini PC for $300. You can run a node, but the staking itself is also incredibly easy to do. You don't have any minimums. There's no 32 ETH minimum to run a node. You can run a node and stake 1 algo if you want at the current price. That's about 15 cents. So you can, you're probably not going to propose many blocks with 1 algo, but you can actually participate in staking and securing network with a minimum of like 1 algo. There's no slashing, so when you stake, your algos sit in your account, they never leave your account. There's no smart contract risk, there's no slashing, we don't take your money away ever, there's no lockups, and payments get paid out immediately. If you're selected to to propose a block, within that block itself, you get the payment. So the payment is happening in real time. So we have a really, really cool staking program and a very decentralized approach. So that's one. 2, the wallet. So of course you already saw the Para wallet, which is our mainstream wallet, but we're building 2 more. We're building 2 more wallets specifically for this financial future. And one is called Intermezzo, and that's our custodial wallet. And it's basically a custodial wallet API. So any company, if you're like a fintech and you want to basically expand and you want to create a wallet, or you're any company who want to basically offer a trusted service to consumers, you can actually use the Intermezzo APIs and very quickly develop your own wallet with your own brand and everything without having to know much about the blockchain itself, because we're abstracting away all the complexities of dealing with blockchain and Algorand specifically to the user. And so to give you an example, World Chess, who's an online chess platform, is a partner of us, and they used Intermezzo to create an on-chain loyalty program. So if you go to worldchess.com and you play chess, you can earn points the more chess games you play, and those points are all basically stored on Algorand. And so they know very little about blockchains. They just use the Intermezzo APIs to connect to the blockchain and basically store all of those loyalty points on-chain. And then the second one is Rocca, and Rocca is our new self-custody wallet that, again, white-labeled, open-sourced, that is really designed for this kind of future finance tree world with a number of features that are at the core of it. One is identity. We believe, like in this future finance world, identity will be core, and decentralized identity will be core. So the base of that Rocca wallet is decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials that will be at the core of the wallet. And now on top of that, we layer a number of other features such as fee abstraction. So you would never, if you in this future world, you don't want people to know about algo, right? You want people to be able to get their money in dollars and then save money in dollars, and then, but the idea that you have to have a minimum required balance of 1 algo or 2 algo in your account, and you have to figure out how to on-ramp algos into your account. And what you really want is US dollars and invest US dollars. So we are abstracting away all of the kind of the native currency. And so this fee abstraction feature allows us to present to the user an interface that is familiar, that is running on fiat or stablecoin currencies, and abstract away all the crypto stuff around it. We're also part of the DREC Alliance, and DREC Alliance is an alliance that allows us to get rid of seed phrases. So the idea beyond DREC is to have a social recovery mechanism for seed phrases. So you can actually share your account with a couple of other people, and they will store a fraction of your seed phrase. And so when you lose your seed phrase, you can actually reconstitute automatically the seed phrases from the friends that you're connected to. And so this is also built into the wallet. So it's a completely reimagined wallet for kind of a mainstream user that abstracts away all the complexities of a blockchain. So that's the wallet. Use cases. Let's talk about use cases a little bit. Any questions, by the way? Let me pause here. Any questions? Any thoughts so far? Yeah.
Before we have a minimum of 30,000 Algorand to have a node, that you mentioned that that's not the rule anymore?
It's never been the rule. So the 30,000 algos for a node is if to get rewards. Oh. And that was a community-driven decision. So we actually asked our community, should there be a minimum to receive rewards? And the community voted and said it should be 30,000. But you can stake a node with 1 algo. You're not going to earn any rewards doing so. So you need a minimum of 30,000 algos, which is about $6,000 or something, yeah, to earn rewards. Yeah. Okay, so use cases. Let me quickly talk about the use cases. X402. Who knows who is familiar with X402? Okay. So X402 is a protocol that was actually launched by Coinbase earlier this year in May, and it's an internet payment protocol. So what it does is, 402 is an error code, is an HTTP error code that has been around since the early days of HTTP. Like you have like a 404 error code, or you had like a 200 code, right? So 402 is an error code that basically says payment required. And so the interesting thing about that protocol of that error code is that it was never fully implemented. So from the very beginning, a website could say, this is a protected resource. I'm not going to give access to that resource to everyone. I need payment for that resource. And so it was sent basically a 402 error message saying, sorry, payment required. The problem was there was no mechanism behind it to then actually collect the payment. And so what Coinbase did this year was launch X402, which is a protocol that enables not only people to send a 402 error message, but then also request a payment to go alongside with that. And that payment then gets settled on a blockchain, which I think is super, super exciting, because I think finally we have an opportunity to have like an internet native payment mechanism. And so we are all in on that. I think there's a massive opportunity there. We create our own X402 implementation. Coinbase, of course, did the implementation on Base. Solana did an implementation, Sui did one, and Algorand did one too. So we are one of the 4 or 5 blockchains out there that have a fully fledged X402 implementation, so people can actually run payments on chain and connect it to an internet resource. And I think the opportunity there is very interesting, specifically in the context of agentic commerce, which is the next bullet here. Like, think about opportunity for developers. Like, currently, developers that build tools, open source developers that build tools, don't have an easy mechanism to get paid for those tools, right? You can, generate API keys. You can convince your subscribers to pay a subscription fee, and then in return you give them an API key. But this is a method that allows you to pay per API. And so, specifically linked to LLMs, I think this is interesting where the world is going, right? We're moving into an agentic world where agents will have access to resources. And there's a protocol for that called MCP. And for now, all these resources are free. So how do you make those resources premium? So for instance, if you tell an agent, hey, I have this picture, can you remove the background from this picture? There should be a tool, right, that does that. Why doesn't the tool charge for that? Like, you could, as a developer, with the right infrastructure behind it, you could now charge for things like that. And you can sell to the agent, yes, I can remove the background of your image. Payment required, it requires 30 cents. The agent pays 30 cents, the image is sent, background is removed, image comes back, and the user is happy, and the user paid 30 cents for that resource. There hasn't been, up to now, there hasn't been a very easy method to achieve this. And that's what X402 and agentic commerce will enable. And that's, I think, super, super exciting, specifically for developers. Tokenization is the third one here. And tokenization, if you look at the early tokenization efforts so far, they haven't really, what has happened is that the real ownership of the asset hasn't really moved on chain. The chain is kind of a ledger, but there's always some other company outside that keeps its own ledger and then syncs it with the blockchain, but it's not really the case that the ownership has fully moved on chain. And this is where 90% of all tokenization projects are today. And so I think that has to move. I think the ownership has to move. And so the way the ownership moves is if the investment contract that's behind tokenization is moving on chain. So for instance, if I have a debt product, the debt product has an investment contract. It has yields. It has a term. It has cash flow streams, right? And so I think that for a debt product to really be tokenized on chain, it has to move all of these features on chain. And so this is something that we're very, very interested in, is like, how do you create smart contract assets that have embedded in it the contract itself, the financial contract itself. So when you basically buy an investment debt product on chain, you also get the cash flows immediately delivered on chain on a frequent basis. We have a project like that in Algorand already. It's called Lofty. 5 minutes. It's called Lofty. And Lofty is doing real estate tokenization. And it's exactly that. It's not that you're moving the title on chain. No, what they do is the title of the company that is being tokenized is moved into a DAO, and then you as an owner, you get a percentage ownership in the DAO, and all of the benefits and liabilities associated with ownership accrue to you. So you get rental payments every single day. You get to vote on like property decisions, whether the property needs a new fridge or not, and you make these votes online. And so everything is basically happening on chain. And so that, I think, is the future of tokenization. It's not just use the blockchain as a ledger, but actually move the entire investment contract over and move true ownership over. So that's tokenization, and then infrastructure. This is my last point. So what are we doing in terms of infrastructure? So I think our investments from a protocol perspective are really focused on 3 areas. One is privacy, and so we already have implemented zero-knowledge proof circuits on Algorand. So there's something called Algoplonk. So if you want to create a zero-knowledge proof circuit, you can actually do so today. And so, but we're basically, thinking more about like where do we take this next, and what do we do in terms of homomorphic encryption and MPC, which are very, very interesting kind of privacy-related technologies that we're kind of investigating. So that's privacy. Post-quantum. Post-quantum is the second one. Like there hasn't gone a day past where you see some innovation on quantum, on post-quantum. The quantum computers are coming. When is Q-Day? Q-Day maybe like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's already happening and we don't know because nobody's telling us. Just like they're just draining wallets little by little, who knows. But quantum is coming sooner or later, and so we all have to get ready for this. And so we've been investing in quantum for years. So we are probably one of the only blockchains that is quantum resistant today, quantum secure today. The ledger is quantum secure. So even if a quantum computer comes around 10 years from now or 5 years from now, the entire ledger going all the way back to the beginning cannot be changed because the ledger itself is protected by post-quantum keys today. The second thing that we've done, and this is very recent, we did this year, we now allow post-quantum, the creation of post-quantum accounts. So now accounts can be post-quantum secure as well, which is the second piece. And the third piece, which is still open and still needs work, is the consensus mechanism. The consensus mechanism also uses encryption keys, of course, and those are not quantum secure yet. But I think we've made a lot of progress. We've covered like 2 of the 3 elements in quantum, and I think we're probably the most advanced in that field. And then finality and scaling. So as you probably know, Algorand is one of the few chains that has instant finality. So when a transaction goes into a block, it is final. It cannot be forked. It cannot be reversed. It is always final. Which, in the case of financial transactions, of course, is very interesting. If you do a bunch of payment transactions, you have to wait 12 minutes for your transaction to be finalized. That adds quite a lot of financial risk. And so we don't have that. We have instant finality. Everything is final instantly. From a scaling perspective, we currently can handle about 10,000 transactions per second. Which is plenty, but of course if you think about the future of agentic payments and micropayments, I think you'll very quickly surpass 10,000 transactions per second. So even though we're very far from reaching those 10,000 per second, we're already thinking about how do we scale this further, and there's multiple mechanisms to do it. There's block pipelining where you start processing multiple blocks at the same time and kind of speed up things. You can do parallel execution and figure out how to do that. And Algorand is actually interesting because when you post a transaction on chain, you have to specify what resources it will use. And so therefore you can parallelize because you can actually now put transactions in parallel that don't use overlapping resources. And so parallelization is actually an interesting opportunity for us. And then of course there's state channels. And I think when we really go to kind of massive micropayments on chain, I think state channels are probably the best solution to actually scale significantly. And so with all of these techniques, we can probably scale at least 100x. So going from 10,000 to, I didn't check this with my CTO. I'm not sure, he hasn't seen my slides. So he may not agree with what I'm saying here, but hey, I think we can easily go, you think we can easily go 100x, no?
I'm not going on record.
Anyway, so we can go much, much, much higher than where we are today using those techniques. And so yeah, that's it. And then my last point, of course, is AlgoKit is like building dApps in Algorand. As you have seen, this presentation was supposed to come before the AlgoKit presentation, but my flight got delayed, so I did it afterwards. So I don't have to talk to you about AlgoKit anymore because you saw it on the slides. So we have one of the, I think, easiest development environments in any of crypto because we support native Python, native TypeScript, and all the tools that go alongside with this. So building a dApp has never been easier. And so yeah, I would say this is our perspective. This is where we think the crypto world is going. I think I'm very bullish of where things are going. We have a very solid plan in place to kind of go after that opportunity, and we would love to do it with you and join us in building the coolest possible dApps that you can build on Algorand. And these are some of the resources that you can snap a photo of and follow us. Any questions? Right on time, right on time. Any questions? No? Yeah.
Hello, buenos dias. Yeah, you mentioned just the real estate tokenization. Are there any other products to do with stablecoins or tokenized funds that Algorand are looking into?
Oh yeah, so yeah, real estate is a big one. Of course, stablecoins, we support a variety of stablecoins. USDC is the most prominent stablecoin that's currently used on Algorand. We have USDQ as well, EuroQ, which are two stablecoins that are issued by a European based company that was one of the first to be MiCA compliant. In terms of funds, we have Aberdeen. Aberdeen is a big money market fund that is tokenized on Algorand. Midas is another one, and there's a bunch in the pipeline as well. Yeah.
Hi. You mentioned that you actually see the future to be fully on-chain. I agree on that, but the problem is, or would you agree, or how do you want to tackle that actually from a regulatory perspective, especially in Europe, the regulation will demand an intermediary, or at least to have someone to go to. So unless the protocol or unless the contract is fully decentralized and you can't reach anyone whom you can blame for whatever you want as a regulator or as a policymaker, then you might have the requirement that you actually have at least an intermediary, or it needs to be permissioned, or going in that direction. So number one, would you think that you want to go in that direction? That's number one, full disintermediation, which I would love, but then you still have the problem that securities are chained to the real world because they're chained to real stocks, they're chained to real companies, unless you have a DAO and a fully on-chain structure. But how do you want to tackle that problem that as soon as you have a point of that is slightly centralized, the regulator will come and demand regulation and centralization?
Yeah, I mean, from an Algorand perspective, we go for maximum decentralization, right? And so, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware of what regulation requires, right? We can't just run afoul of regulation, and so so we also have to make sure that protocols that are developing in Algorand have the tools to be regulatory compliant. And so, to give you one concrete example, Quantos, which is a company I just mentioned that's doing the EuroQ and the USDQ and the EuroD. So the EuroD was the first kind of European electronic money token. And so it's different from a stablecoin in the sense that it always holds its value. You can always, the stablecoin can vary, it can be 0.999, it can be 1.001. An EMT is always 1. So you have 1 EuroD, you can always exchange it for €1, always. And so, but it's a regulated MiCA compliant token. And so there's requirements alongside with that. So for instance, Quantos cannot issue that token to me. Like, I'm based in the US, I'm a US resident, I don't have access to that token. And so therefore it has to be whitelisted, right? And that's just what it is. And so, and it needs to be able to support clawback and freezing and all of these things. And so we have, like, our assets, the assets that are running on Algorand are all kind of native, so they don't require smart contracts, and they all have these features built in. So you can do freezing, you can do clawback, you can do whitelisting, and so this is kind of a compromise, right? Because I think you have to allow these features, otherwise, you're not going to be able to operate in Europe in any decent way. That doesn't mean we can be maximally decentralized. We still want to be maximally decentralized. And so, for instance, to give you an example of like how that potentially would work, Midas, for instance, is tokenizing, is a German company, is tokenizing treasuries, right? And so the problem is, as soon as you tokenize a treasury, it's considered to be a security, which then goes under security law. And so how do you make that composable? Right? It's very hard to make that composable in a DeFi environment if it's a regulated security. And so the way you have to do it is you have to basically set up separate pools. You have to set up a liquidity pool where you basically, if you do a loan and, like, let's say a lend and borrow deal, and you want to use that as collateral, you have to create a separate pool where the people that have access to the pool are all whitelisted and all have access to that particular and can have access to that particular asset. And so it can still run within DeFi, but it's running in kind of separated liquidity pools. So I think there's ways to make it composable and there's ways to do it, but we have to think carefully about how to do it to kind of not run afoul of regulations. And I think we have to push back on some regulations, like the idea that the UK has where they limit the amount of stablecoins you can own is like,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have a question. I have following what Algo have been doing the last 2 years and have been following the events you have making around the world, right? But I don't see so much yet here in Latin America. I see a lot in India, I see a lot in Asia, so I'm in Latin America, of course, and I want to know how is the plans for Algorand when you think for us Latinos, right? Because here you have a lot of devs, here you have a lot of content creators who are being a dev right now. We are creating a new generation of devs who is already using Web3 products, right? So for me, it's so important to know what the plans for Algorand for Latin America. In general, Brazil, but Latin America.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. And I think in the early days of Algorand, we had quite a few projects in Latin America, and we still do. We still have quite a few projects. Like Koi Banks is based here. There's a number of projects that are based in Latin America, and it's true that from a developer outreach perspective, we haven't had like a close and a big focus on Latin America. And it's some of the things I want to change. I want to actually put more emphasis on Latin America because I realize, and this is also the reason why we're here, why we decided to go really big with DevConnect and like really reestablish those relationships with developers in the region and figure out the best way we can actually help you and be successful in Algorand. So we definitely want to do more here for sure.
I'll jump on and say I'm on the DevRel team, so come talk to me, anybody in the LATAM area, and let's build a strong community here. Let's do it.
Yeah, we have people on the ecosystem team here as well that are on the startup team that are from LATAM. So yeah, we definitely have people here that can help, but we want to put more structure around it and figure out a way to better help you.
Hi, my name is Liliana. I don't know. My name is Liliana. I'm co-founder of LSET Consulting Group. We have several products and we want to come with Algorand, using Algorand, and we want to know if it's able to develop an L2 over Algorand, and how is the way to have, I know that you have a system to have own nodes. If you can illustrate me, please.
If we have own nodes, sorry? The system for own nodes? What did you say about the own nodes?
No, if we can have own nodes on Algorand, so we can put our crucial information, because we have customers in our products actually, and are several of them. We want to know if we can work with Algorand. We are very interested in. We should definitely talk in more detail. I think there's no technical reason why you shouldn't be able to do it. We've never really done it. I think there's another way to go about it. Is you can establish if you want to kind of have more control, you can actually create a separate Algorand spin up, and then you can connect it to over a state bridge, a wireless state bridge that is a trustless bridge that can connect it to as well. So I think there's multiple ways to do it. We haven't seen a huge demand for that, but we're happy to talk to you about it. Yeah. Yeah. I had to go with you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 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 Yes.